everybody, and welcome. I'm very excited to have you here. I'm very excited. We have a wonderful guest here from Northern Ireland, here to share her wisdom. We have so much wisdom to share today, so we're going to be doing a number of different topics throughout the day. We're going to release these as a bunch of different videos, but one of the things that we want to talk about today is the need for connections and community. Which is, yes, it is. Connections and community. What we really want to get out of this is really share with you tangible reasons and the benefits for creating some kind of bespoke community, because we need it, and I feel like we need it now more than ever. Catherine Murnin from Northern Ireland, say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. What's community to you? Let's just kick it right off.
Oh, Jim, right in there. So I guess for me, it is that feeling that people are connected. And as you said there, the world now, we need that more than ever because there is so much disconnection with ourselves and with the people around us. I think maybe driven through fear, lack, concern for self rather than others, and how we can actually create that ripple effect across the places where we live, work and learn. And that for me is really important, and that's why I created my business. And community, I think, is culture. It is tradition. It's harnessing all the things that make us feel good about somewhere. But then when we're more invested in our community, I think that we can find out more about others and be more inclusive and embrace diversity.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I mean, when I think about community today, we've got like surface level community. We've got like social media. You know, we think that we're connected with people, but we're actually not. It's the surface level kind of nonsense. But one, it takes work now to build your community. Before, your community was just created for you.
Yeah. Right?
You go to your church or your synagogue, and that was part of your community. You've got your neighborhood, and you didn't really leave your neighborhood. You weren't global yet, back in the 80s and the 70s and even the 90s for the most part. You go to your university, it's part of your community, and you were just kind of thrust into these communities. But as you get older, and now as we're more global and we're on our phones and everything else, we actually have to do work to build a bespoke community, which is difficult. How do you get started?
Well, I guess I'm blessed. I'm from rural County Down in Northern Ireland, and that sense of community is still very strong there. As you say, connected with church, sport, school. For me, it was getting involved though, because community is not going to come to you. You have to give back. You have to try and create something there yourself. So I always felt that, I suppose, commitment to share my skills, my experiences and giving back. And I find when you do that, that creates that powerful ripple effect. So for example, in the school situation or in play school when my children were there, that's when I started to meet people. That's when I started to build my community, to get that sense of connection with other mums. And out of that, the conversations mean that you start to know other people, people connect you with someone else, and it just grows and grows from there. And particularly during the pandemic, that was so important, because although we weren't able to physically be, when we were out walking, everyone knew someone. If there were troubles, if there were challenges, if there were older people who were really struggling, that sense of community was there. So I guess for me, that's always been really important. It's something I've tried to instill in my children as well. And they travel across the world, but they always come back to that sense of who's around us. How can we give? Because if we give, pay back, give, we'll get that reciprocated. And then we'll be able to have those new connections as well, no matter where we are.
Yeah, I feel it's like one of those, there's a book called The Four Agreements, and one of those things is really talking about how are you actually giving it, and there's a belonging aspect, right? There's, you actually, the community no longer exists, you have to build it your own, but you actually have to do the work, and you have to actually put yourself out. And I know in New York, in the suburbs of New York, we're up in Westchester, it's easier for the moms to get together because the moms just do that. And it's more difficult for men to do that because men just don't really, first of all, we just don't care, but we do care. Like, it's that weird kind of conundrum. But when we talk about diversity, we talk about inclusion, we talk about all of those things for your community. Belonging is really like, how do you fit? And the only way that you really fit and belong is to bring that kind of authentic self. And I feel like it's even more difficult now, because now you have to, one, am I comfortable sharing my authentic self? Because I'm supposed to be this person on social media and all of this stuff. So how do I make my authentic self? How do I find someone who meshes with that authentic self? And then how do I find someone who wants to be part of a community of our authentic selves that we actually want to spend time with? And like, you've got all these levers and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to sit and read a book. It's kind of nice.
Switch off. Yeah. Well, you've talked before when we've had conversations about curiosity and good questions. And I think for me, that's been really important because I guess growing up in rural County Down, quite sheltered, almost when I took those steps to travel, felt a bit afraid of doing that as well. And I guess my parents, really hardworking, but didn't have that opportunity to travel. And for me, that, I suppose, was a challenge because I had that sense of belonging in the small community where I was. But I knew if I didn't travel and put myself out there, that's the only place I would belong. And I didn't want to have that. I wanted to have that kind of connection in other places. So I started getting curious about the world. When I met with people from different backgrounds, different places, asked questions to kind of pick out a bit more about why they were there, how they felt that sense of belonging. And for me, from a spiritual point of view, feeling that groundedness, that at peace, only comes with authenticity. And again, we've had these conversations before about the person that you want to be compared to the person that other people think you should be.
Right, the person you want to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
And unless you're grounded in that and feel that confidence, even when you're afraid and you still do things out of your comfort zone, how do you belong? Because if you don't belong internally, if you don't have that connection and that sense of, I suppose, stableness or stability with yourself, then it doesn't matter where you're going to go. You're going to feel like that loose cannon, that person is just bobbing along. Whereas if you feel you belong to a tribe, to a greater good, you can take that with you no matter where you actually be in the world.
What I like about you, and we've talked about it, is your ability to ask good questions. Like you actually care about people.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I struggle with is I just, it's not that I don't care. It's just I'm indifferent.
Okay.
Right? More indifferent on, what other people are doing and everything else. And I think a lot of people are like that. You've got so many things going on and what's pressing and what's the priority. And, one of my reflections for is, I actually had to sit and think, like, what do I actually care about? And why do I care about it?
Yeah.
And community is something that I put down, like, I actually do care about it. But then how do I get past indifference? Mm-hmm. And how do you start to really get started and take tangible steps to be curious about other people? And it's a lot of work that oftentimes doesn't have any kind of payout.
Yeah.
And it's almost transactional. Have you always been this less transactional, more kind of, let's just, is this a rural Irish kind of thing that New York's got to learn or what?
Well, I think I've always been like a people person. Sounds a bit cringe, but I really feel energized when I'm around good people. I also feel very privileged because I've had those opportunities where I know other people haven't. But it's so interesting listening to you saying about the indifference and the kind of transactional piece, because I totally don't see you like that. I guess for me, obviously our different backgrounds and the kind of pace that you live and work in the city, but you still have time to care. I mean, I wouldn't be here conversation with you today only that you've taken an interest in me, you've supported me, you've had my back and things. So I guess it's kind of that difference between, for me, building the sense of community, but also that has worked for me in a business perspective because I guess Northern Ireland is a small place. All of my work comes from personal recommendation. But now that I've kind of started to work in other parts of the world, that has happened because of people like you. So I guess for you, me looking at you, think you want to cut through the BS really quickly. You're not interested in people who are time wasters or, that aren't going to give. But also I think that for someone who is in this environment, in the busyness of Manhattan, you really do display a lot of the qualities that I align with and feel that synergy with you, Jim.
So how do you get someone, we talk about community. You could also you could use the word networking. You could use the word connections. You could, whatever it is. And we think about these words and we don't really give it meaning. Mm-hmm. Like, if I close my eyes and I think about the word community, what does that actually look like? And it probably looks different to me than it does to you. Yeah. When somebody closes their eyes and they think about networking, they think about, the awful feeling you get walking into a room of strangers and trying to meet while other people might see this opportunity to just learn about, something curious and just how am I going to enjoy these 2 hours and you focus on it. And there's mindset shifts on how to treat other people. What's your recommendation on that?
So networking is really interesting because I hate the word. And actually I was down at Ulster University a couple of weeks ago talking about networking with purpose. And for me, that's the core of that, because I'm quite nervous going into those big spaces where there's lots of people. So I do prepare. I think, okay, who's going to be there that I do know? Mm-hmm. That at least there's a safe space for me to connect with when I'm in. But also then I look at who else is going to be there, and I do become genuinely curious, because I think, okay, if I can help them, if I can spread the word, which my business is fundamentally about inspiring well-being conversations in the places where we live, work and learn. So in our communities, in our workplaces, in our educational systems, which to me are all fundamental communities. And I find that when I do that, that I always meet people who align to my values, or I meet people who challenge my perspective, which is really good, because that helps me to have that growth mindset, helps me to learn, and helps me to lose some of the prejudice that I may have. But I also think that there's an awful lot of people at the moment who go to those things to get. So they're not there in that space to share, to learn, to communicate, to add value. They're there to get what they can. And you can see that really quickly, because it turns into, I suppose, a bit of a sales pitch. Yeah. And I'm not comfortable with that. I don't do sales. I'm very lucky that I've not had to. But I guess that networking for me is just connecting up the people that are there. How can you share? And how can you develop together without maybe expecting anything at the end of that? Yeah. And if that happens, for me, there's always an outcome. I mean, I do some, pro bono work as part of my business offer, just my model. I've never done that I haven't had business out of that. So I've gone along to, maybe a group of women talking about women's health and mental, emotional well-being. And wow, there's somebody in the audience whose daughter is the HR or L&D lead of a big company. You need to speak to her. Yep. Or I go to maybe a men's group, and then someone is a CEO and wants to talk to somebody about leadership. So it's always that reciprocal arrangement for me as well.
So the two things with networking, I guess. One, intentionality, right? How do you be intentional with the people that you want to be around, and how do you find the people that you want to go, and you do your research in advance and you do that. But at the other side of it, and this is, it's easy to make recommendations on networking rather than actually do it yourself, but that focus of how do I actually enjoy these next 2 hours? Yeah. And it's not, I think a lot of people put too much pressure on themselves for networking. Yeah. They think about their sales pitch, they think about their elevator pitch, they've been told to do all these things, and they have the recitation ready to go. And I think people reject that. I think we're being marketed to constantly everywhere we go. And it's just icky. Like walking into an networking place is just gross, because the people are trying to pitch you on too many things. Yeah.
And I've left events for that very reason. I mean, even events that I've paid to go to, because it just hasn't felt like a comfortable space. Now, that's my own probably limitation, but I find that if you're there in a genuine capacity to learn, to share, that you will get something out of it, but other people will get something out of you as well. And the 2 hours, time is precious. Yeah. And, for us in Northern Ireland, a lot of the time you're traveling there, you're parking, you're getting set up. Right. Those maybe 3 hours are so, so important and invaluable, that why would you go and do that unless you're getting that sense of accomplishment out of it?
Yeah. There's, I think we don't have like a full appreciation of time as well. Right. Do you think events are over? I mean, I feel like most of the events that get set up, and you go to these networking events, and it's questionable value. And we've talked a little bit about this before we started, but how do you find a good event? Yeah. How do you actually look for, say, these are the people that I want to be around, and this is the group of people? I guess it just goes back to the intentionality question. Yeah.
Or create that network and that yourself. Yeah. Right, and I mean, and it takes courage to do that as well. And that's some of the things that I've been planning over the last while. And I guess that comes back to community, the people around you, the people that are supporting you, but the people that have, those aligned values. And often it's when you, I suppose, collaborate in that way to get the best out of whatever event you're going to put on, that's where people come. Because to sell an event in a way that's, like a marketable sales pitch is uncomfortable for me, and that's maybe why I don't do it so much. Whereas if I'm part of something that has got a really clear message in it, then people tend to show up because you've given out the right information and the right vibe there.
Talk to me about, I feel like in counting down, it's more of a, I'm not going to say necessity, but I think about community more locally, right? I'm in New York. I don't really have to expand outside of New York. I don't have to do anything outside of New York. There's enough in New York for me to just kind of find pockets, wherever I want to go. You're global. Unfortunately, I'm global too, right? I mean, this is nice that, I go to London, I go to Northern Ireland, I go to like these places. But most of the global connections we have and global community that we look to build is all virtual. And I hate social media. I feel like I despise social media. Like, we're doing this, we're going to cut it up, we'll put it on social media. I know the PR people are happy for that. But I despise, like, if I ever won the lottery, the first thing I do is just delete social media. I never turn it back on. Like, that's right. It's awful. Because we're constantly being marketed to, and it's inauthentic, and it's just kind of, there's little benefit. It's all just kind of a marketing kind of thing. But I feel like the dream of social media was to build these communities globally, right? That was what we were pitched, and that's what, there's some people who do that, and they try to do that, but it's still surface level. It's not deep. Yeah. How do you build a global, I mean, you flew to New York, and you've got connections in New York, and you're spending, in-person time. Do you need in-person time for community?
I feel I do personally.
Yeah, me too.
And I suppose it comes back to, and we're going to chat about this later as well, the power of using social media for good, because I probably wouldn't be here only for the connections that I've made in a virtual world. So through LinkedIn and some of the people that I've met there who said, oh, you should talk to this person, you should talk to this person, through showing up at some events for people to support them, like a guy, David Gilna, Irish playwright, has travelled around New York and the States, but is connected with people in Canada, connected with people in the south of Ireland, who have then become clients of mine. But he's one down-to-earth, lovely guy, but he has that power and that sense of community behind him, and he will share and connect you with anyone. I also think that it's really exciting for me to be here. So I am 100% with you. If the lottery win came in tomorrow, I would be off it. But it is a space to show your wares. I don't have the front shop. I don't have the store. So that's where it is. Right. And I genuinely love being able to put posts up and share stuff that I've done. But for example, if I was in a workplace delivering a 3-hour program, or in a women's group doing something around empowerment and leadership and resilience, the snapshot on social media is nothing compared to the experience that we have in that room together. So you can only do that, and it's time consuming, and sometimes I really think, oh, I cannot be bothered. But again, you get the engagement behind that. There's a bit of energy there, and I suppose I'm really lucky, Jim, in that I know I'm connected with people that I know on some level. So I've either had some sort of a conversation or some sort of an interaction. Do you know, whenever you're on social media and you get these requests to connect, I really usually only connect with people that either I know or someone knows them, or I feel an affinity with them. Like, I have other friends and connections who have, hundreds of thousands of followers, but you see on the social media space, they're not getting that interaction. Whereas thankfully I do, and that is meaningful for me, because it's not about the likes or the kind of ticks. It's more about the conversations that you have within that. So I do feel the in-person stuff is brilliant. I mean, who doesn't want to come to New York a few weeks before Christmas?
I know,
you know
right?
What I mean?
Right before Christmas, of course. Yes. As we're wrapping up session 1.
Yeah. Wow, that went fast.
It went fast. I know. That's pretty good. How do you get started? I feel like I could go, there's the friends I've got, and I go to give them a call. I'm like, they're going to think something's wrong. Like, why? Like, I don't reach out. Sorry, guys. I never reach out. But how do people get started on this? How do you shift your mindset from, I want the good interactions rather than 5,000 followers? How do I, what's the point of social media? What's the point of this, rather than just scrolling through and wasting your time? Is there anything people could do, especially around the holidays? I guess now is the time to start reaching out, right?
Yeah. And make that call. I mean, you think of someone you haven't been in touch with for a while, contacted you, okay, you might say, what's wrong? But then as the conversation starts, you probably get that feeling of connection again, kindling something, maybe some sort of a conversation. And I just think be brave about it, because people like to talk. People like you to be interested in them. And I think as time moves on and things shift within our families and there's change there, I want to be sitting whenever I'm older and not be, an old retired person in the house with no one to go out and see. I want to be a member of something. I want to have that sense of belonging, that sense of community. I still want to be doing things that will have that ripple effect, because I've had a really good life so far. I hope there's lots still to come, but I want to be able to give that back to the other generations coming behind me. And I think that's a powerful legacy to be able to leave. Yeah. And it takes work. It does. Right? You have to, and it's not bad work, right? It's rewarding work. Yeah. To build a community, you have to put yourself out there. You actually and it's not,
being accepted or rejected. It's just, being curious about somebody else. That's all it is. It's not really.
There's a saying, I don't know if it's here, but certainly in Ireland, you're not everyone's cup of tea. And that's so true. And
that's my favorite is, you can have the greatest peach tree in Georgia. Some people don't like peaches. And that's okay, a really good right? One. Just let it go. And that's fine. You just start, Okay. Well, thank you, Catherine. That's episode 1. We're going to do more, but I hope everyone enjoyed it. Go do your work. Find a friend. Or you've done a friend, just start a conversation, right? Start building community connections, especially during the holiday season. It's the perfect time to do it. We'll be back with more. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.